Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very special edition of Preemie Chats, the day that we work toward all year long, the day we come decked out in our purple. This is our special for World Prematurity Day. My name is Jenna Morton. I'm a preemie mom and journalist based in New Brunswick, and I am thrilled to be one of your hosts for this special program. Thank you for joining us.
Preemie Chats was created and is put on by the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation, or you may know them as CPBF. The foundation is a parent-led charitable organization that helps families in and after NICU through education, support, and advocacy. I'm Leah Whitehead. I'm also a proud preemie mom and former journalist, and I'm happy to be here and to have you all here with us today. As you heard, we're from different locations in Canada, and our special guests today are also from all over. So with that on our minds and in our hearts, as we gather virtually from across Canada, we acknowledge the Indigenous peoples who are the traditional guardians of the lands on which we live and work. From coast to coast to coast, this land has been home to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples since time immemorial. We honor their enduring presence, their deep connection to the land, waters, and skies, and the wisdom they continue to share with all who now call these lands home. We thank the more than 630 First Nations, their people, and ancestors who have taken care of these lands that we share. We pause and reflect on our own connection to the land, and we're grateful for the generations of Indigenous people who have cared for it long before us.
Our mission at Canadian Premature Babies Foundation is to ensure that no preemie family walks the journey of prematurity alone. We partner with hospitals, researchers, and parent leaders to build programs that empower families, share knowledge, and advocate for better outcomes across Canada. This year has been a real year of momentum for CPBF. Thanks to our advocacy, the first ever parent-led EPIC group was formed. It will be presenting its findings at the National EPIC Conference in February. Our National Parent Partner Network has grown rapidly and now includes 28 paid and volunteer NICU parent partners who are advocating and offering vital support within their hospitals. And our push for equitable RSV prevention across Canada is beginning to see meaningful progress, with real change already underway and even more on the horizon. Our work is powered by community, by people who care enough to make a difference. Every donation, no matter the size, helps us expand critical programs, improve access to education, and strengthen the systems that support preterm babies and their families.
As you listen to today's stories and meet some of the remarkable people who are shaping the future of preterm care, we invite you to join us. A gift of $50 can sponsor a family for a session of peer support. But even more than that, it sends a message of hope. It tells parents you're not alone. Your baby's story matters, and there's a community standing with you. And if you're someone who likes to give gifts this holiday season, consider giving a gift that makes a lasting impact, one that holds meaning for you and your loved one, while also supporting Canadian preemie families. Together, we can create a brighter future for every preemie, every parent, and every family who begins their journey in the NICU.
And speaking of funding and support, we do want to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible sponsors and partners who make this program possible. Preemie Chats today is sponsored by Angel Eye and Medela. We also want to thank our ongoing presenting sponsors, Mallinckrodt, Methafarm, and Gluckstein. Their ongoing commitment helps us bring people together from across Canada and around the world, families, clinicians, researchers, advocates, to advance care and strengthen the systems that support preterm babies and their families.
World Prematurity Day isn't very old. It's only been around for about 16 years, but it has become a global movement. It's recognized in more than 110 countries. So between November 16th and 18th, landmarks and monuments around the world will glow purple in solidarity with preterm babies and their families. And here in Canada, we are proud to say that every province is lighting up at least one monument this year. And it's officially recognized by the Government of Canada, and it stands as a reminder that together we can make things happen.
And CPBF is helping lead that change. This year, we are proud to be supporting 21 in-person events across the country and sending materials to 64 hospitals. There is so much happening, so many ways that you can get involved. You can join us by encouraging your family and friends to wear purple to raise awareness. You can touch base with local hospitals, see what they're doing, and ask how you might get involved. And you can snap a photo of one of those monuments lit up purple and share it online. If you do, please use those hashtags World Prematurity Day 2025 and Preemie Power Canada, so we'll be sure to see it. And of course, you can always visit our website to find out where events are taking place and access all the resources.
As I mentioned, we're joined today by some incredible voices who are help shaping the future of neonatal care. You're going to meet people who blend science, compassion, and lived experience to give preterm babies a strong start for a brighter future. We have 9 speakers, a credible lineup, and they are from all over. They're going to be talking about various, very interesting topics and how we can participate in giving babies a strong start for a brighter future.
And always one of our most powerful parts of the program will come from hearing directly from families. Today, you're going to meet the proud mom of 4 whose youngest daughter arrived unexpectedly at 28 weeks. And that story will take us through moments of fear, faith, and gratitude, and remind us that behind every statistic is a story of love, resilience, and hope.
As always, it's a staple of our show that we are live. And so we want to hear from you. Let us know in the comments where you're joining us from. Send in any questions or comments. You can share your experiences. It's through these conversations that we have, like the ones that we're going to have today. You know, they're really heartfelt, they're collaborative. And I feel like it's what moves us forward together and continues to give preemies the strong start they deserve. I am happy to say that our first guest today, of course, is none other than CPBF's Fabiana Becchini. And, you know, she really needs very little introduction other than to say she is the heart behind this amazing organization. She's a mom herself of a surviving twin. She gets it, and she inspires so many people, motivates us, and really unites people across Canada in the cause of helping babies thrive. She is a hero to many. And so I am proud to welcome Fabiana Becchini to the stage. And Fabiana, as we mark World Prematurity Day, why is this conversation about preterm birth so important right now, both here in Canada and around the world?
Thank you, Leah. So nice to see everybody. And thank you so much for hosting you. And Jen, it's amazing every year that we have a growing audience from all over the world. So as we know, 1 in 10 babies is born too soon worldwide. And here in Canada, that number has increased in the highest levels in 50 years. We have approximately 32,000 babies born preterm each year. And prematurity is not just a medical event. It is a life-changing experience that affects families long after baby leaves the NICU and also impacts our healthcare systems. It remains the leading cause of childhood disability and death before the age of 5. But there is tremendous hope. Advances in neonatal care are rewriting what is possible. Today, babies born as early as 22 weeks are surviving, something that would be unimaginable just a decade ago. With every innovation, every program, every community effort, we are helping these babies not only survive, but really thrive. So it's still our work isn't done. Each year in Canada, around 15,000 preterm infants live with ongoing medical developmental needs, and the cost of prematurity exceeds $80 billion annually. And behind every statistic, as you mentioned, Leah, is a family learning, adapting, and doing everything they can to give their child the best and start possible. So that's why we are here today, Monday, World Prematurity Day. And this year's theme is Give Preterm Babies a Strong Start for a Brighter Future. This theme was developed by our global partner, GFCNI, the Global Foundation for the Care of Newborn Infants, in collaboration with parent organizations from 37 countries, including CPBF. This year's calls for urgent action to improve health and well-being of preterm babies from the very beginning. A strong start in life helps these babies grow, thrive, and reach their full potential. It is not only the right thing to do, it is also a smart investment in healthier, stronger societies. So the slogan draws inspiration from the World Health Organization theme, which is Healthy Beginnings, Hopeful Futures, reflecting our shared global mission to ensure that every preterm baby has the best possible start in life. Yet, we must recognize the inequities that persist across Canada. Families in remote and indigenous communities and those living in rural areas often do not have the same access to specialized care and support. So addressing these gaps through awareness, investment, and collaboration is essential to truly give every baby an equal chance to have this strong start. And here at CPBF, we collaborate with researchers, we involve parents in quality improvement projects, we advocate for certain interventions that make a critical difference in giving preterm babies the best possible start. For example, skin-to-skin care, breast milk, and neonatal pain management, because we know that pain impacts brain development. These are always essential and should be seen as medical interventions as much as a ventilator. Equally important is parental engagement in the care of our babies in the NICU. When parents are empowered to participate in the daily care as part of the NICU team, babies experience better growth, improved development, and parents become advocates and have less stress. So I want to thank you all for joining this session today and keep this conversation going, because prematurity does not end when our babies get discharged from the hospital. So I want to share, we want to share a beautiful video here today. And this video really is the reason why we do the work that we do every day. And I'm sure all the healthcare providers and scientists that will be speaking on this live session today will agree with us. This is our very strong why. So thank you.
They said I was born too early, but I was never too small to matter. I am brave. I am creative. I am a warrior. I am resilient. I am special.
I am funny.
I'm a miracle.
I'm a father.
I am powerful. I am here.
Even the smallest heart can hold the brightest light.
Oh my goodness, that video is just incredible and sets the tone for what we're going to talk about throughout the afternoon here together today. As we do move through our presentations this afternoon, we want to keep things flowing as quickly as possible. So Leah and I are going to be offering just the briefest of introductions of our guests. But if you would like to find their full biographies, all sorts of information, you can find that on our website, canadianpreemies.org. And, we are a parent-led charity. As such, we are thrilled to begin today's presentation with a family story. And it is my honor to welcome Adrienne McKnight from Calgary to join us. Hello, Adrienne.
Hi.
Welcome to Preemie Chats and to our World Prematurity Day special.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much. I know you've prepared a bit of a presentation to tell your story, so I'm going to bring that onto the stage now and let you tell us about your journey.
Great. Thank you. I'm truly honored to be here today to share our family's NICU journey as part of this World Prematurity Day special edition. Every November 17th, our family heads to a nearby park with a view of the Calgary skyline. We take a moment to look at the Calgary Tower glowing purple, a quiet, powerful reminder of this day and the community it represents. For us, it's a moment to reflect, remember, and celebrate just how far we've come. My name is Adrienne, and I'm the proud mom of 4 amazing kids, 3 full-term and 1 little fighter who came into this world much sooner than expected. Today, I want to share our journey with our daughter, Kate, and how the care she received not only gave her a strong start, but gave all of us hope for a better future. I'd had 3 healthy pregnancies before Kate, so when we were expecting our 4th, I assumed this one would be the same. My labors had always been very quick, precipitous, and I even dilate silently. So with my middle 2 babies, I was actually induced to avoid giving birth at home or in the car. When I was 27 weeks pregnant, I mentioned some mild symptoms to the doctor who was covering for mine. She reassured me that everything I was feeling was normal for that stage, and I trusted that. But the next day, everything changed. Early that Wednesday morning, I woke up to what I thought were strong Braxton Hicks contractions. Within minutes, they intensified, and suddenly my body was bearing down. I told my husband to call 911. The dispatcher said calmly to him, "You can do this." He was instructed to lay me down and grab a pillow, 2 towels, and a shoelace. I wasn't ready for this. My body was completely taking over. Thankfully, the fire truck and ambulance arrived, and they realized I could not birth at home and rushed us to Foothills, where the stage 3 NICU is. When we arrived, I begged the doctors to keep her in, to stop what was happening. But she looked at me and said, "It's too late. You have no cervix left. The baby is coming." My body was ready to bring my baby into the world, but my heart and soul weren't. I wasn't mentally prepared to go into labor. It felt too soon, too abrupt. My body was taking over, but my soul knew it wasn't time. When the team asked me to push, I was torn, caught between what my body was doing and what my heart and mind were ready for. And then 6 minutes after we arrived, Kate was born, 3 months early at just 28 weeks, weighing only 2.9 pounds. The moment she was born, she was whisked away. I didn't see her for 6 hours. When I was wheeled into recovery, a man passed by and said, "Congratulations." He meant it kindly, but in that moment, it didn't feel like something to celebrate. It felt like grief. I had just had a baby, but she wasn't with me. I wasn't able to hold her until the next day. Those first 3 days were her critical window when we didn't know what the outcome would be. She faced so many challenges, including respiratory distress syndrome, grade 2 brain bleed, a hole in her heart, retinopathy of prematurity, apnea, 2 fed, and multiple hernias. She was intubated, then on CPAP. I remember being in complete shock. I was in survival mode, numb to any updates or information. It was as if I'd put up a wall just to make it through. The first time I had to leave the hospital without her was one of the hardest moments of my life. It went against every instinct I had as a mom. The NICU became our world for 61 days, 1 month at Foothills and another at Rocky View. Something beautiful happens in the NICU. You realize you're not alone. I'll never forget those quiet moments in the NICU, masked faces, tired eyes, and hearts full of hope. When I made eye contact with another parent walking the same uncertain path, you just nod. No words were needed. Our eyes said it all. That quiet, unspoken understanding that said, I see you, we're in this together. In those moments, we became a family, connected by shared hope, fear, and love for our little ones. Slowly, things started to change. Kate began to breathe on her own. Her heart healed without surgery. Her brain bleed resolved. The news that once terrified us started to shift toward hope. I'll never forget the small moments that kept us going, the nurses who whispered encouragement, the doctors who explained every detail, the care team who made us feel like we still had a role in her healing. Even through fear, there was compassion and connection. After 61 days, we brought Kate home. It should have been the happiest day, and in many ways it was, but it also felt strange. We were anxious about caring for her without the constant support from the NICU team. That first month, I was still in survival mode. Once the adrenaline wore off, the emotions caught up with me. I found myself replaying everything. The doctor visit the day before giving birth, the delivery, the hospital stay, all the what ifs. Around 3 months later, I realized I was not okay. I remember feeling this deep ache I couldn't even name at first. I wasn't ready to be done being pregnant. I was grieving that loss. I'd had 3 full-term babies before, and I knew what those final months felt like. The kicks, the hiccups, the growing anticipation. This time, it just ended overnight, and I never got to say goodbye to that part. Seeing very pregnant women or full-term babies was unexpectedly painful. I was also angry, and if I'm being completely honest, I was angry at my doctor. I had just gone in one day before and mentioned mild cramps and some light pink spotting. I was told it was normal and no exam was done. I trusted that. And I couldn't help but wonder, would things have been different if she'd checked on me? If I'd been sent to the hospital right away? Those thoughts stayed with me for a long time. It was hard not to replay it over and over again in my mind. I carried so much guilt. There were no answers for why she came early, and I turned all that uncertainty inward. I started blaming myself. Maybe I hadn't rested enough. Maybe I carried the kids too much. Maybe I shouldn't have lifted something heavy that week. I would lie awake at night going through photos from those days, studying every little detail, trying to find signs I might have missed. I even found myself Googling symptoms, just searching for anything to explain what happened. It was exhausting and it kept me stuck in guilt. Eventually, I realized I needed help to process everything. I started counseling and therapy, and it helped me begin to let go, to see that I didn't cause this, and that sometimes there simply isn't a why. Even though Kate was thriving, I had to allow myself to heal. Today, Kate is 5 years old. She's strong, joyful, and full of life. Last year, she had surgery to repair her hernias, but otherwise, she's healthy and thriving. She started kindergarten this year and loves keeping up with her 3 older siblings. She truly embodies this year's theme, give preterm babies a strong start for a better future. Every time we watch her play, we think of those early days and of all the people who made her strong start possible. The first responders who got us to the hospital in time, the doctors and nurses who cared for her around the clock, and the staff who cared for us as parents, reminding us that we were still part of her healing. Our journey truly changed me. It inspired me to give back to the community that once carried us. I now sit on the NICU Parent Advisory Council, sharing a family voice to help shape care and policy across Calgary's NICUs. I also volunteer as a peer mentor, offering support to parents who are living through what many describe as the hardest chapter of their lives. And this past year, I joined the planning committee for the Mercedes-Benz Calgary Health Foundation NICU Charity Fashion Show. I had the honor of chairing the silent auction, which helped raise over $250,000 to support all Calgary NICUs. Watching our daughter Kate walk the runway as a NICU graduate was a moment we will never forget, a true celebration of resilience and hope. When I think of giving preterm babies a strong start for a brighter future, I think of Kate, of how fragile she once was and how far she's come. I also think of every parent sitting in a NICU right now, hoping and praying for their baby's strong start. The care, compassion, and commitment that surround these families truly change lives. It gave our family a future we once weren't sure we would have. What I've learned through all of this is that every act of kindness, every bit of involvement matters, whether it's providing care, supporting a fundraiser, joining a parent group, or simply offering encouragement. It all helps give preterm babies a strong start. We are one team, one family working together so that no parent has to walk this path alone. I truly believe that when we share our stories, we not only heal ourselves, we help create a better future for the babies who come after ours. Thank you for listening to our story and for helping raise awareness and hope for all preterm babies and their families.
Oh my goodness. Adrienne, thank you for sharing your story with us. It was the perfect way to begin today's discussion. And I just want to, again, I know we've talked about this before. It is so important for us to share honestly and openly about all of those hard emotions that come with being a preemie parent. And you shared so eloquently. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
And yes, seeing those pictures of your daughter on the runway are just, they're so fabulous. It's so heartwarming to know what some of these preemies go up and come to be. I know my 12-year-old who was 2 pounds now towers over me in height. So
yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us and for everything you're doing to give back to the community. We're going to wrap things up and move on to our next guest. I just wanted to give you one last chance to share a message with everyone before you leave us.
Thank you so much for having me, and thinking of all of the parents out there who are in the NICU and who have their babies at home with them right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, now we're going to invite our next guest to join us on the stage here. Dr. Christine Chambers is a world-renowned researcher and scientific director of the Institute of Human Development, Child and Youth Health at the Canadian Institutes for Health Research. And she's going to discuss how funding has helped advance research in the areas of preterm birth. Hello, and welcome back to Preemie Chats.
Thanks for having me. So glad to be here.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and for all the work on behalf of all the researchers that you're representing here, for what you've been doing. I would love if you could start just by giving us that little kind of background. We talked about the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. I know you're celebrating a milestone 25 years. Tell us a little bit about the role of the Institute.
Yeah, so sometimes people ask me, what is CIHR, Christine? What is the Canadian Institutes of Health Research? So we are Canada's federal funding agency for health research, and it's our 25th anniversary this year. So we were formed in the year 2000 when the Canadian Institutes of Health Research Act was signed into law. So it's really hard to believe that it's been 25 years. And CIHR is formed of 13 different institutes. And so the institute that I have the privilege of leading is the institute that's focused on human development, child and youth health. But there are 12 other institutes and 12 other scientific directors that cross a range of health conditions and particular areas. And so many of them, not just me, are committed to the health of children and a lifespan approach to research. And our institute in particular, so the Institute of Human Development, Child and Youth Health, or ITSE, as we call it for short. It's a tough acronym.
Sounds like itsy itsy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's how it was first introduced to me. I've also heard that it's the French pronunciation of our acronym in French as well. So there's a couple of origin stories for that. But our institute is focused on the areas of better beginnings, vibrant childhoods, and empowered youth. And so we work across a broad range in the health research community to help identify research priorities. We are very fortunate to have the advice and guidance of our Institute Advisory Board. And Fabiana, who we heard from earlier, was an incredible parent contributor for a number of years and recently wrapped up her term. And we also have a Youth Advisory Council who bring youth voices and youth perspectives to our work at our institute as well as CIHR. And so, generating new knowledge through science, making sure that science is put into action is such a critical part of improving health outcomes. And preterm birth has been a big area of focus for CIHR and our institute in particular.
Yeah, and I would love to know more about some of those particular research projects and advancements that have come out, in relation to preemies and life in the NICU and everything we're talking about today.
Yeah, we did a kind of an analysis just to look at sort of how many projects have, CIHR funded over the years in the area of preterm birth. And believe it or not, we have supported substantial investments in preterm birth research. So over 1,600 projects over the last 25 years. And when that's all added up, it represents an investment of over $270 million over 25 years in preterm birth research. So that's, an incredible investment, an incredible range of health research. And at CIHR, we talk about different pillars of research, which include, basic science, clinical science, health services and delivery, as well as sort of sociocultural and population-based research. And we've supported preterm birth research across that full range of science. So it's really an incredible research community. And I want to acknowledge the leadership of the prior scientific director of our institute, Dr. Shu Li, who really made sure that preterm birth was an area of focus and really led some incredible innovations, not only in the field himself as a clinician scientist, but as a leader at CIHR at the funding agency.
Can you give, some real kind of concrete examples of some of the impacts that you've seen based on research that was funded through the program?
Yeah. So again, through that range of project, there's been all kinds of incredible discoveries and innovations. And the preterm birth world is impressed me in terms of their ability to network and some of the incredible innovations across the country. Just last year, we were at an event at McGill where we had a chance to hear an update on the Canadian Neonatal Network, for example, that was launched in 1995, and the leadership and coordination that's been made possible through that group, and CIHR funding has contributed to the success of that group. So Dr. Prakash Shah, Dr. Mark Beltempo, some of the incredible projects there. And one of the things that I find really incredible about the work of these networks is how they've been able to take information from different NICUs across the country and through the evidence-based practice for improving quality EPIC program, really be able to feed kind of feedback and information into improvements in care. So some of the information they shared with us was between 2004 and 2017, survival without major complications for babies born between 23 and 32 weeks went from 56 to 70% because of these incredible quality improvement efforts. So that's just one example of the incredible achievements. And I think certainly Canada is regarded as a leader in improving care for preterm babies. We've also seen networks and researchers advance care in innovative ways. And wanted to give a shout out to our Institute Advisory Board Chair, Dr. Bernard Thébault at the University of Ottawa. Last year, he received funding from CIHR to launch a clinical trial on treating WPD in premature babies. And this is incredible work that is really, really innovative. And so just a sampling of some of the kinds of projects that are in leading edge science that are resulting in improvements for care for premature children and their families.
There were a lot of familiar names that you mentioned there to people who watch Preemie Chats all the time. And I think what really stands out to me is, again, that power of collaboration and cooperation that we certainly see very relevant, throughout Canada, these strides that we make when we're able to collaborate on things together, and how much easier that's becoming both nationally and internationally with technology and things like we're doing today. So it's so heartwarming to hear the actual stats on the other side of what that kind of work together brings about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where we're so well positioned in Canada. We're a big country, but we're a small community. And so the power of collaboration, how these NICUs have linked together, scientists contributing from different disciplines. I think preterm birth research is really a stellar example of what we can contribute when we have funding and we have incredible talent and devotion and engagement of parents and families as well.
And I was going to ask you about that, because I know that's a powerful piece of all this is, making sure that parents, families, you mentioned youth voices are, front and center in all this. If someone's listening and going, I want to give back, I want to be involved, I want to be heard, what can you say to those families listening that want to get involved?
Yeah, and I think, we are at a point in health research and patient-oriented research where, patient and family engagement is not only just invited and welcomed, it's actually required. So a lot of the funding opportunities that we sculpt, within our institute, we require knowledge users, patients, families to be involved, because that's one of the best ways to make sure that research is relevant and meaningful, and that, parents and families are seen as part of the team. But there's a couple of ways that families can get involved. One is by participating in research. And so there are usually opportunities advertised through your institution. If you're currently in a NICU, you can ask. You may have even been approached about a research study. And actually, I'm the parent of two premature babies. I had late preterm twins who were in the NICU for a period. And I had the pleasure of participating in a randomized trial of co-bedding for twins in the neonatal intensive care unit to reduce pain from painful procedures. And that was led by Marcia Campbell-Yo, who's a nurse, clinician scientist here in Halifax. So the opportunity to participate in studies, to contribute to science, and certainly that there are other ways now. And I'm going to say the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation is just a stellar pillar of capacity development for family engagement. But getting involved through your organization can help to link parent and family partners with different research opportunities, either at the project or researcher level, or opportunities that present themselves at the funding agency level or different advisory committees. So, the parent voice and the family voice, the voices of children who've been born prematurely, are just so valued and so important at ensuring we fund and support impactful science.
It's always so fantastic to have you on the show, and I love when those moments happen where your own experiences kind of blend over and layer on. It really does add to the research and the experience. I think one of our NICU nurses ended up in the NICU just after us, and she and I have had lots of discussions about how that shifts your approach to things. And so it's really fantastic to have you share that with us today.
Well, thanks so much for including me, and really grateful that research is such an important part of what the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation engages with and supports. So thank you all for the excellent work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chambers, for joining us today. And Dr. Christine Chambers is a professor and Tier 1 Canada Research Chair in Children's Pain at Dalhousie University. She's also the Scientific Director of the Institute of Human Development, Child and Youth Health at the Canadian Institute for Health Research. Well, continuing on now, the World Prematurity Day theme for 2025 is giving preterm babies a strong start for a hopeful future. And our next guest is highlighting an area of research that is doing just that. Dr. Jacques Balela is a board-certified OBGYN teaching in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at McGill University. He's also a clinical investigator at the Lady Davis Institute of the Jewish General Hospital in Montreal. He is well known for his research, and today he's going to join us to share some highlights of the benefits of delayed umbilical cord clamping. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and very nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to have you. I know you have some slides prepared for us, so we're just going to bring those up and let you jump right in.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, everybody, and thank you so much for the great privilege and opportunity to be here to speak with you today. Special shout out to Dr. McDonald, who kindly switched her schedule to allow me to be here today. So I really appreciate that. We'll speak today about a practice that many of you may be familiar with, and if you are not, well, then I'm very happy to introduce it to you. It's a practice that is known as delayed cord clamping on delivery, but of course we're going to speak now more in the context of prematurity, and the idea would be to explore some of the physiological benefits and clinical outcomes following the implementation of delayed cord clamping protocols, particularly in the premature infant population. So just to talk a little bit about a background, cord clamping really is the procedure or the process whereby the baby is separated from the mother, essentially the connection to the mother through the umbilical cord. And it is essentially really what puts one of the final points or the end to the pregnancy, technically, where the baby now is responsible for his own oxygen supply and his own nutrition, his or her own nutrition. Now, cord clamping, in terms of its historical practice, used to be carried out immediately. Immediately, what does it mean? As soon as the baby was out of the birth canal, be it through cesarean section or vaginal delivery, the cord was clamped and cut, and the baby was then handed either to the parents or to the nursing team, depending on the state at birth. However, we have learned through research, and particularly over the last 15 to 20 years, that delaying this process and allowing, therefore, all of the blood to evacuate the placenta and the umbilical cord and essentially make its way to the baby has actually significant clinical benefits, both in the short and long term for really all babies. But what we will see here is primarily it is so for the context of premature baby. And so the typical delay is anywhere between 30 and 60 seconds. And usually clinically, the way that this manifests is that the cord essentially stops pulsating and changes color, becomes a little bit more white, essentially being devoid of blood. And so we know that finding solutions essentially to help this critical population, where we know prematurity is one of the leading causes of neonatal morbidity and mortality, is important to find different solutions that can allow us, therefore, to improve outcomes. And so delayed cord clamping has been essentially promoted recently as one of these interventions. What is the physiological basis for delayed cord clamping? It is essentially a phenomena of placental transfusion. It's, in other words, it's getting blood from inside the mom and into the baby. And we know that approximately at birth, 1/3 of fetal blood volume is contained within the placenta and the umbilical cord. And therefore, delayed cord clamping allows for a significant transfer of this blood to the neonate to the tune of about 20 to 30% of its blood volume. And it is really crucial for the premature infant's immediate and long-term outcome. And so how does this really work? Well, there is a component of it that is purely mechanical. This is gravity assisted, essentially, when you position the infant relative to the placenta, and then flow can then transfer more passively. There is the phenomena of uterine contractions, which is what prevents the hemorrhage after delivery. And that in itself can help push some of this blood through the placenta into the umbilical cord and into the baby. And some of the neonatal breathing can actually create negative pressure inside the fetal abdomen, or the neonatal abdomen rather, at this stage, which then allows for more of that suction pressure, negative pressure, so that blood can actually end up coming to the baby. And so usually, as we spoke about in the slides previously, we tend to do this for about 30 to 60 seconds, in as long as, of course, both the baby and the case itself allows us to do so. And we'll see in a moment why there might be reasons where we're not able to do delayed cord clamping in the premature population. So to talk a little bit about its benefits, well, we know essentially hematologic benefits, as we spoke about, that excess of 20 to 30% blood volume going to the baby. Well, that first of all increases the blood volume in the newborn. It reduces the risk of anemia, which is one of the indications often for failure to thrive and NICU admissions if the baby is not essentially doing well, or is tachycardic, or is having issues with breathing and respiration. We know that now we can have higher iron stores for longer term health, which we have good research now to show enhances neurodevelopment. And we know that babies can sometimes have conditions such as hemolytic disease of the newborn, or sometimes they might require simply as a consequence of the anemia and the jaundice, some blood transfusions, and the fact that we allow for delayed cord clamping reduces the frequency with which these transfusions happen. And that, although it sounds often simple, you have to take into account that takes away that, first of all, that has costs to the system, that takes nursing, it takes a bed, it takes a NICU admission, that can have impacts on other admissions and other babies. And therefore, a simple 30-second to 60-second technique can actually go a long way, essentially, as a public health measure to improve the outcomes, not only for the health of the baby, but for the system as well. In terms of both the cardiovascular and respiratory stability, we know that the delayed cord clamping can essentially ensure a hemodynamic transition that is a little bit smoother, and allows, therefore, the baby to gradually adapt to now having to breathe its own oxygen and thrive in a world where there is no connection to mom, no physical connection to mom anymore. In terms of cardiac function, we have good research to suggest that delayed cord clamping can enhance cardiac performance in the first 24 hours of life by increasing the cardiac output, stabilizing blood pressure, and reducing the workload on the immature heart, such that if you tend to be might have to pump a little faster and can get more fatigued, particularly in the premature population. In terms of oxygen delivery, of course, a continuous oxygen supply is critical during long aeration and just simple respiration, and maintaining an oxygen saturation, particularly during episodes of apnea, which the premature population is more likely to have, can actually be of significant benefit. And finally, both in terms of neurological protection, we know that there is improved neurodevelopmental outcomes and decreased risk of, for example, intraventricular hemorrhage, which is one of the main reasons for admission into the NICU, with improved cerebral blood flow as well. Finally, we know, again, from fairly robust research, that reducing that delaying cord clamping in the premature population reduces one of the main risks of being born prematurely, notably the necrotizing enterocolitis. And we have a good meta-analysis to suggest that the risk of NEC is reduced between 30 to 50% in babies that undergo delayed cord clamping. So many, many benefits in multiple areas of the newborn's physiology. Again, just to go over quickly the neurodevelopmental outcomes that we were talking about, the iron sufficient, or the iron stores being replete, seems to be critical for brain development in prematurity, and that improves cognitive outcomes, both in terms of motor development and educational attainment in babies that were premature and received delayed cord clamping, as well in the fine motor skills at 4 years of age. And this is actually evidence from randomized controlled trials. So very, very good idea to do so. Now, what are some of the risks or some of the contraindications, right? Because it sounds like it's a wonderful measure, but sometimes, and in some cases, we're not able to do this. The potential risks of essentially of providing a heavier blood flow is that you might actually have an increase in jaundice that requires phototherapy. And jaundice essentially is a consequence of the bilirubin concentration in the blood. But the risks of jaundice are minimal compared to all of the benefits that we spoke about. That being said, there are some contraindications. In other words, reasons why we're not able to do this, particularly if the premature baby needs immediate resuscitation and therefore needs to be in the care of a NICU team or the neonatal nurse. So we have to hand the baby over right away, essentially, for resuscitation. Obviously, we cannot wait the 30 to 60 seconds because those 30 to 60 seconds can be actually quite critical. If essentially there is what we call a placental abruption, which is a premature separation of the placenta, usually that tends to manifest with maternal hemorrhage, and we have interest to remove the placenta as soon as possible or as quickly as possible to prevent maternal complications. Well, in those cases, we might be less likely to be able to do delayed cord clamping. If there is a placenta previa, which is essentially a placenta that covers the cervix, it's the same reasoning because you might be experiencing significant bleeding, and you have to get these babies out, particularly via cesarean section. And we know that babies that are born through cesarean section tend to have a little bit more of a difficult time in that transition, essentially, to extrauterine life. If there is a cord avulsion, which is essentially when the cord itself separates from the placenta, well, that is just a mechanical reason that we can't essentially get the blood from the placenta because there's no connection within the placenta anymore. And again, sort of the immediate resuscitation requiring particularly positive pressure ventilation prior to cord clamping is also a contraindication. These are thankfully rare, and it really is related mostly to the gestational age. Now, you know, when you go through medical school and you start your pediatric rotation, the first thing that they tell you is, you know, kids are not just tiny adults, and they have a different sort of physiology to a degree. And it's important to think of the same sort of analogy, if you will, between premature babies and term babies, not so much because their physiology might be so different, although it is essentially an evolving process, of course, throughout gestation, but because they tend to respond to similar therapies in different ways. And so while delayed cord clamping does provide benefits to term newborns, it would appear that the benefits are a little bit more pronounced in the premature population. So the benefits for the term infants include, again, increased hemoglobin concentrations and iron stores, which may have, again, the favorable effects on the neurodevelopmental outcomes. But the risk of jaundice appears to be higher in the term population than the premature population. And again, here too, the risks are really minimal compared to the benefits. And the benefits for the premature population, well, we've gone through them already. So something to keep in mind. We have now sufficient evidence to have included this idea into our clinical guidelines. And so we know the World Health Organization in 2014 recommends delayed cord clamping for all births, including premature, unless, again, there are any contraindications. The American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology in 2017 came out essentially with the same advisory, which is suggest to delay cord clamping for 30 to 60 seconds for vigorous infants and preterm infants, term infants and preterm infants that therefore do not require resuscitation or any kind of nursing support. And the American Academy of Pediatrics and the NRP also support this practice when the baby is stable. So the implementation steps, or the way that this happens really clinically, baby is born, we wait 30 to 60 seconds, and while we're doing that, we stimulate and dry the baby, putting the baby therefore on skin to skin with mom whenever possible, and then assessing the degree of resuscitation that may or may not be needed, whether it's something to just suction some secretions in the mouth on the maternal abdomen, or whether there is positive ventilation or incubation that needs to take place. So again, just to conclude, the delayed cord clamping really ought to be and really has become the standard of care. It is a vital intervention for improving the outcomes in premature infants with very minimal risks. And particularly, as we spoke about, these benefits can manifest in multiple systems, both cardiovascular, hematologic, and neurologic, and digestive in particular. I want to thank you very much and open the floor for questions should there be, or if you want to email me or reach out on social media, those are my coordinates. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that insightful presentation. I always am amazed at the difference that a few extra seconds, like you said, that 30 to 60 second window, the impact that can have on a baby's start in life. And so I appreciate you sharing your presentation and really being very clear as well about the benefits, because I remember when I was on bed rest, there was a research study being done about delayed cord clamping. And I didn't say yes to much research when I was on bed rest. That was one that they clearly outlined the benefits. And so I appreciate you doing that for us today as well. And also thank you for putting up your contact details. So please reach out to Jacques if anyone has any questions, as we are on a tight schedule today. But thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and taking the time.
Thank you very much.
We're going to continue on the theme of early interventions that make a lasting difference. So our next guest is Dr. Sarah McDonald, a maternal fetal medicine specialist and professor in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at McMaster University. Dr. McDonald will be sharing her expertise on the use of antenatal steroids, exploring how our understanding of their timing and application has evolved over the years. And have they ever? And so I wanted to start by asking you that very question. Where have we been with antenatal steroids, and where are we going?
Thanks, Leah. Where have we been? We have been in the same place since 1972, when the very first high quality study was done looking at 2 doses of Celestone, 12 milligrams each, 24 hours apart in injection. They were found to be very beneficial to help babies born very early. And without good dose finding studies to underpin that initial work, we've continued on with that same dose, despite the fact that care, thankfully, both antenatally and postnatally, has evolved. So where we are is where we were, unfortunately, last century, which is pretty shocking. The good news is that there's ongoing research looking at where should we be with steroids. Maybe we should be with the same dose that they established in 1972, but maybe we should be looking at lower doses as well.
And so is that happening? Are people looking at the dosage and whether there should be lower dosages given?
Absolutely. There's different trials looking at this. We have one in Canada called SNACS, and I'm really grateful to the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation for being my partner parent organization. There are other studies. For example, the World Health Organization is looking in late preterm infants between 34 and 36 weeks at an even lower dose. So there's ongoing work. Thankfully, it's time, but the medical research and parent communities have partnered together to start to relook at this question.
And also the question of timing. So I know that that was something, again, I had received antenatal steroids and they had really hammered in, the timing was really important. I think at that time it was a 7-day window, correct me if I'm wrong. And so is there any kind of looking at that as well?
Many different aspects of steroids are being looked at, and some more recent work suggests that although perhaps the optimal window may be 7 to 14 days after the first of the 2 injections, there's other work suggesting that benefit may extend 3 or possibly even 4 weeks after. And the other end of the spectrum is also being studied. There used to be a thought that after the second dose, you needed 24 hours. As we talked about, the second dose and the need for that is being questioned in high quality research like the SNACS trial. But also the window, we used to think there was no benefit if you didn't make that 48-hour mark. And now there's some benefit, maybe not optimal, but even with a few hours worth of steroids. So if in doubt, give them, even if you think babies is really, really coming, because we might buy a few extra hours and that might help baby.
Speaking of that, of the idea of, when in doubt, give them, is there any hesitancy on the side of families in getting steroids? I know that, it's a question mark in people's minds, and certainly was in my mind. And so I'm just wondering, how often does that come up, and how do you address that?
I should add, if you're really certain baby's coming and it's very early, then give them. That's the when in doubt is it going to be a few hours or a few days? I think there is some hesitancy, but not a lot, I would say, around parents' concerns with steroids. I think most of us can try to communicate pretty clearly to parents that this is actually one of the interventions for which we have the most evidence. We have 50 years worth of evidence, and many high quality studies, about 30. And there's actually very little in high risk obstetrics that has that foundation of evidence that we can be so clear that if your baby's going to be born very early, steroids help. Whether you need 2 doses is under study, whether one will do. But I think most parents are eager for interventions that are going to improve outcomes for their baby. And when we can talk about the benefits together, I think the hesitancies, if there are any, decrease or fade away completely.
We just had a presentation talking about risk benefits, and I found that Jacques really gave us the research behind it in his presentation. And so knowing that we have this 50 years of research with steroids, do we also know the risk, if any, that are there in using them?
So that has been understudied in the long term. Of the 30 high quality studies, only 3 look into childhood. And those 3 high quality studies suggest no difference in intelligence, a little bit of a benefit in preventing movement disorders. But those babies were born in the 1960s, 1970s predominantly, the 1980s. And hence, it's just not clear the degree to which that still applies today. And if we're going to look at more recent data from this century, we have to move outside that very highest quality research to still good research. And that research tends to suggest that there may be harms. So kind of the opposite of what the earlier 1960s, 1970s research suggests. So I think we really need better data. We need the highest quality evidence to give to parents. And I think we really have to hold hands together on this and say, we're going to look beyond short term. We're going to do what the parents have asked us and look longer term, because parents are in it for the long haul. And so the medical and research communities needs to be too. And when we're doing interventions antenatally or in the NICU, let's push for long-term information to be able to share with parents.
I appreciate you studying this, because you're right. It's something that we definitely need more information on. And so when you think of the world of antenatal steroids, what are you excited about? What is your best hope for what's coming?
Well, my best hope is, I'm biased, is that we'll find much better information about what is the right dose. And so, I mean, that's a large part of what I do with the SNACS trial. And thank you to the 15 centers across Canada that are already working with us. And we've got another 5 out there who are in the midst of starting up. And so I think it's time. There's been lots of movement postnatally in the intensive care unit for babies to look at lower doses of steroids postnatally, and obstetrics and the antenatal community needs to also do that. I think there's other exciting work being done looking at different types of steroids that may result in less high peaks in fetal circulation. There's even fascinating work in animals with, like, let's get rid of the needle and put a patch on instead. and if you can do that in a woody, we should be able to do that in humans. And so there's also exciting basic science research being done looking at if there might be a link with long-term concerns. What are the mechanisms? Is it DNA methylation? Is it other epigenetic changes? So there's a lot of exciting work going on in the steroid world.
Well, I thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us today. I put you on the spot with some of those questions, but I always have a good discussion with you and appreciate your approach, especially when it comes to um, working alongside families. And I really feel like you have such commitment and dedication to doing the very best for babies and their families. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your knowledge.
Thanks for the chance, Leah. Have a good day, everybody. Go World Prematurity and Preemie Babies.
Oh, she's so great. Next, we're going to lead into prevention to connection. We're going to look at how early medical and relational experiences shape a baby's developing brain, body, and sense of safety. Joining us is Chantal Morin, a clinical nurse specialist with extensive experience, both in trauma-informed and developmental care. And so we're so pleased to have her join us here today. Welcome.
Thanks, Leah. It's great to be back with Canadian Preterm Babies Foundation. I'm very honored to be here, always as a adult preemie, as a preemie mom, and as a nurse to preemies. So it's always so great. So I've got just a little chat, and then we can chat after. So I'm going to invite everyone to take themselves into the NICU for a moment. Close your eyes, and if you've ever walked into one, just think of all of those alarms going off 100 times a day, and realizing that those are really important signals, but some of the most important signals are silent. When we talk about strong starts for preterm babies, we often think about technology, better incubators, better medicine, and we've heard about some of that great medicine today so far. But strength doesn't begin with equipment; it begins with safety. So as a neonatal nurse and someone who was once a preterm baby myself, I've come to see that the strongest beginnings are built in the quiet. They're in the way we hold and speak and see the babies. Trauma-informed developmental care is not another checklist. It's not something nice to do when we have time to do it. It's a way of being with the babies, with families, but also with each other. It's about creating environments that support healing and nurture growth by meeting physical, emotional, and developmental needs. But really at its heart, it empowers families to be active participants in their baby's care from the very first moment. At the root of it all is safety. Safety is defined as the condition of being protected from protected from or unlikely to cause danger, risk, or injury. So consider this. Close your eyes if you feel safe to do so. Imagine yourself in your safe space. Maybe this is your bed at home because it's so cozy and it's so warm. Maybe it's somewhere in your home. Wherever it is, you feel completely at peace. Go there for a minute. Now, suddenly, the bright lights flash on. There's a loud bang that fills up the room. Someone lifts the blankets off of you or touches you with no warning. What just happened to your body? Chances are your breathing got really fast, your heart rate started racing, all your muscles got really tense. That means your stress system got activated, and it's preparing you to either go into fight, flight, or fleeing. That exact same response happens in our babies. Every single time they are startled by a bright light, by a sudden sound, or an unexpected touch. When this system is triggered again and again without support or buffering, it changes the wire of their developing brain. And over time, those experiences shape not just the baby's stress response, but their sense of safety and connection in the world. So let's take a minute. I'm going to invite you to flip the switch. How can we create more healing experiences in the NICU? We can start with the environment. Keep the lights low, sound soft, and keep your touch intentional. But perhaps most importantly, we can start with relationships. Be relational and intentional in every interaction that you have with babies, with families, and with each other and your colleagues. Introduce yourself. Yes, introduce yourself to the baby too. Speak before you touch anybody, including the baby. Touch the baby before you do anything with them. You would never, ever walk into an adult hospital room, grab their arm, take their blood pressure, and not say a word. This exact same respect belongs to the babies we care for. When we approach care with gentleness and permission, we build not only psychological safety, but we're helping our babies learn that touch does not always mean pain. It's physiological safety as well. We see it in more stable heart rates, calmer breathing, and deeper rest. I remember fondly one mother holding her baby skin to skin, and the baby was all restless and its back was all arched and she didn't look comfy. So I gently asked if I kind of said, your baby doesn't look really comfortable there. Can I help you find a more comfortable position? So together, we just made a few small adjustments, and within seconds, that baby just melted into mom's chest. The room got quiet. The mother sighed, and with relief, and her support person whispered, she's like, wow, look at her. She's so peaceful now. That moment right there is the power of safety. And it's a science of connection. That strong start begins when we see babies as the human beings they already are. They aren't tasks to complete or fragile bodies to manage or mannequins or robots that we can just go do stuff to, but they are people who feel and communicate and remember. So because every experience leaves an imprint, even the tiniest one, and when those early imprints are built on safety, attunement, and love, they become the foundation for a bright, thriving future. So I know that was a very quick snippet, but if you are interested to learn more, you can reach out to myself or my partner, Isabel Maletta at Tender Services. We offer various educational opportunities to deep dive into this subject. So I think I've left some time for any questions, if there's any.
Oh my goodness, that was just beautiful.
Thank you.
It's been 13 years almost now since we've been in the NICU, and there's so much that brought back, but in a lovely way, because it's so important to have that. Like, yes, you need to talk to a baby before you touch it, and I can remember I have such fond memories of my husband. Someone had told him this, obviously, and he had that in his head. And every time he went to our kids, he would talk to them and say things, and then say things that, you might not think of telling an infant because they don't know, yes, I'm about to pick you up. Oh, I'm looking at this now, even when we brought them home, he would do that. And he was like, this is your house. This is where you live. This is where we live. Yeah. And
you were like, oh my God, the word's blanking me, but you're narrating your care for them, right? So
yes. And then there's all the literacy benefits that are built into that as well, which is fantastic.
Absolutely. The reading and the music. And I always tell them, like, if you love a good Harlequin romance, I don't care. Still read it out loud. Right? It still counts.
Exactly. Yes. Well, thank you so much for saying this. It really stood out to, your phrasing about, these infants, they're not tasks to be checked off. This is life. And I think as the parent of a preemie, you always wonder, how do those things that happened impact them? Because I know how it impacted me, but I don't know long-term what their body responds to, and if it has anything to do with what happened when they were in the NICU. So it's wonderful to hear and more people.
So much more evidence about that there is so much now that what they do go through does impact them. And it might not be those major morbidities you think of prematurity, but the sensory processing disorder, the lower school scores, like all those minor cognitive delays and challenges can easily come back to the way that they were cared for. So I think it's always opportunities to grow and learn and do better for our babies.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, and so wonderful to have a grown preemie among our speakers as well.
That
so
too,
thank
absolutely.
you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And that was Chantal Morin. And, just so much is happening when our babies are little and in the NICU. And now we're going to move to another one of those kind of very vital aspects of early care with our babies. We're going to talk about feeding, and we're going to talk about how a simple drop of human milk could offer preterm babies powerful neuroprotection and even shorten their hospital stays. And this is a passion of our next guest, Barb O'Rourke. She is a neonatal clinician with more than 30 years experience. She's joining us today from Des Moines, Iowa. Welcome, Barb.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have a presentation prepared, and so we're going to get that up on our screen now, and you can share your wisdom with us, please.
Okay. I need to, I thought I had this, that way I could move it forward, but.
Yes, you should be able to there.
Let me see. My name is Barbara Rourke, and I'm a clinical staff and research nurse from the NICU at Blank Children's Hospital in Des Moines, Iowa. I am so grateful for this opportunity to talk to you today. So, as NICU clinicians, we all know that in the NICU world, it is not uncommon to think that premature infants have a critical window of opportunity for oral feeding. Today, I want to talk to you about an evidence-based practice that has opened that window and has changed the trajectory of feeding outcomes while significantly shortening the length of stay in the hospital for very premature infants. These are the same infants who are at highest risk for oral aversion. So what we do know is that eating doesn't just happen, it is a learned behavior. In utero, the fetus is continually sucking and swallowing the amniotic fluid. By the time he is full term, he is an experienced and a coordinated eater. So what we do know is that eating doesn't just happen, it is a learned behavior. In utero, the fetus is continually sucking and swallowing the amniotic fluid. By the time he is full term, he is an experienced and a coordinated eater. Annually, over 13.4 million infants are born prematurely, and as we push the limits of viability, we are saving younger and more fragile infants. From the moment these infants are born, their mouths are being invaded every 3 to 6 hours, and because of their immaturity, they will be tube-fed, depriving them for weeks and often months of the enjoyable oral experience of sucking and swallowing. 80% of premature infants will have difficulty with feeding, and each infant will have his own threshold of tolerance. However, when the negative oral experiences outweigh the positive, the infant may avoid or even refuse to eat. This is called oral aversion.
And this is a foreign concept to us, the fact of, or the concept of not liking to eat. Shannon and I like to eat. Everyone I know likes to eat. And before we have the triplets that have these feeding issues, we were never aware that this issue even existed.
We have taken the triplets to 5 different feeding programs throughout the United States, which has totaled over a year of our lives living in and out of hospitals and away from home. We made great progress at the programs, but ultimately it doesn't matter which program we go to because once home, our children have regressed. Again, it becomes a daily battle to feed them. But as parents, we have to feed our children. We have no other choice. Watching your child suffer several times a day, every time they eat, is incredibly painful.
Sometimes food makes me sick. Why don't you like food? Because I can't.
For over 30 years, I have been feeding premature infants. Then one night, one infant and one moment changed the way we care for our premature infants. That night, I was assigned to take care of a little preemie called Lily. Lily was born at 27 weeks, and after I did her cares and tucked her in, I placed a drop of her mother's milk on her lips. Lily seemed to smile as she pulled her little hands closer to her face and began to suck stronger and longer. I did not take care of Lily again until the night before her scheduled G-tube, now at 42 weeks. She had become severely aversive, and I thought surely there's something wrong with her. So I dug into her progress notes, read her history, trying to justify this aversion.
Every test that could be done was done, and every test came back negative. No reflux, no vocal cord paralysis, no milk allergies, no aspiration, nothing. Now, 15 weeks later, as I placed a drop of breast milk on Lily's lips, the response was so different. Instead of the ecstasy of the smell and taste of her mother's milk, she now puckered her lips and pulled her head back. The space of time from that first encounter made this such a stark contrast. This was that moment, and I realized we did this. Just like the research says, all those negative oral experiences, it had happened so gradually, right before our very eyes. The concern of oral aversion and the inability of many of our micropreemies to take full oral feedings at 40 to 44 weeks led us to ask and receive approval to conduct a research project called the Milk Drop Study. The intervention would allow premature infants to be offered droplets of milk for the sole purpose of oral enjoyment. The milk drop intervention would start on the 3rd day of life. Milk drops would be offered with every full gavage feeding. However, milk drops would not be offered with oral attempts, as these attempts were considered the oral enjoyment for those feedings. The very low birth weight infant has a survival rate greater than 85%. 80% of premature infants will have difficulty with feeding. This graph shows the trend of very low birth weight infants born and also the trend of gastrostomy tubes placed from 2000 to 2020. We can see the birth rate shows a gradual increase of about 10% over the last 20 years. However, the rate of G-tube placement over the same time has increased by more than 140%. This widening gap is likely driven by a combination of factors such as improved survival of medically complex infants, the recognition of feeding challenges, and also changes in practice that may favor G-tube placement. The increased risk is because from 23 to 32 weeks gestation, the premature brain is developing rapidly into neural networks. The more frequently a neural connection is stimulated by experiences, whether good or bad, the more likely it will become permanent. In other words, if the infant receives more negative oral experiences than positive, the negative may become dominant, which may affect the infant's ability and even desire to eat. But it is also important to understand that safe and effective oral feeding depends on development, maturity, and coordination. So most premature infants will not be mature enough to be offered oral feedings until they are 32 to 34 weeks. For the infant who is born at 23 weeks, that is 9 to 11 weeks of taping, suctioning tubes, and oral care, and very little oral enjoyment during the most critical time of structural differentiation of the brain. The good news is, though, the brain does have the ability to change. This process, called neuroplasticity, is affected by experiences, and all experiences are filtered through the senses. Now, how can we harness this knowledge? By doing what we already do, but adding an enjoyable oral component. We will do it deliberately and consistently around the clock with cares and full gavage feedings to provide a multisensory, enjoyable oral experience. We will place a drop or two of milk on your lips and offer you a swab or pacifier. At this point, you become a participant. If you accept the swab or pacifier by opening your mouth, we will offer you more milk, a drop at a time, pacing you as you suck, but allowing you to guide the process. If you respond by sticking out your tongue or just licking the milk, we will offer you more milk, a drop at a time, and allow you to participate just by licking the milk. However, if you don't respond, we will let you rest. You still have had a positive oral experience with those few drops of milk, and you will have an opportunity at your next feeding. So let's look at the results of the milk drop study. Column 1 shows the gestational age. However, the most important columns are 3 and 5, showing length of stay. You can see the 24-week control infants had an average length of stay of 135 days, while the subject infants had an average length of stay of 90 days. That is a 45-day difference, or 1/3 of their hospitalization was cut off. 9 out of 10 of the subject groups had a shorter length of stay, the most significant length of stay being seen in the smallest and most fragile of infants. Shorter length of stay should decrease costs and increase savings. The hospital analytics department estimated our NICU saved over $663,000 on these 99 infants, an additional bonus to these infants' outcomes. The most wonderful result of this intervention is that we found that milk drops actually became a natural progression to cue-based feedings. As the nurses gave the milk drops, they taught the parents to observe their infants' cues. They taught the importance of offering the milk slowly, a drop at a time. They taught the parents to let the infant guide them, allowing the infant time to start, stop, and restart. A study by Rodriguez was launched to show the safety of giving colostrum orally and to measure the immune response in tracheal aspirates and urine. The subjects were extremely low birth weight infants with a mean weight of 657 grams and a mean gestation of 25.5 weeks. The method was started at 48 hours of life, and the infants were given 0.2 mL of colostrum every 2 hours for 48 hours. The results were that all infants completed the protocol. There was a wide variation in immune response. O2 saturations were stable or increased during the protocol. There were no adverse effects, and all infants sucked on their ET tube while receiving the drops of milk. Based on this research, many NICUs throughout the country do oral care with breast milk to prevent ventilator-associated pneumonia. I would like to highlight a 2024 pilot study conducted by Loyola University in Chicago, which examined the impact of the milk drop intervention on oral feeding skills by using the early feeding assessment tool to measure the infant's ability to remain engaged, organized, and coordinated while maintaining physiological stability during oral feeding. The milk drop group demonstrated a trend in better feeding skills at first feeding, at discharge, and better improvement over time, suggesting these infants had developed a certain level of experience before they ever started bottling. Loyola has just been awarded a 5-year longitudinal grant to continue this research. As I have presented the milk drop study, I have met some incredible NICU researchers who want to talk to me about the potential of more research with milk drops. One researcher cited an article on reflux that due to the premature infant's immaturity, gavage tubes are inserted into the stomach, bypassing the mouth, airway, upper esophageal sphincter, esophagus, and lower esophageal sphincter. Until the infant begins to take oral feedings, the esophagus is basically in a dormant state, and the lower esophageal sphincter remains partially open, with the gavage tube acting as a wick for reflux to move back and forth. He then explained that although sucking on a pacifier is a positive oral experience and it has been shown to decrease length of stay, that the action of sucking elicits the lower esophageal sphincter to relax and open wider. In other words, because the infant is sucking, the lower esophageal sphincter thinks there is food coming down the esophagus and it needs to get ready and open wider. However, because the infant is only sucking and there is no food coming down, the lower esophageal sphincter will remain open, potentially making reflux worse. However, the researcher went on to say that when the infant receives milk drops, he is sucking and swallowing, and the peristalsis of the now engaged esophagus will help clear the reflux. He then cited an article by Dr. Jack Lahara of Nationwide Hospital in Columbus, Ohio, that reviewed a decade of evidence on feeding premature infants. This article states that the more premature an infant is, the less swallowing experience they had before birth, that the development of the swallowing function requires neuromuscular stimulation, sustained practice, and time in order to develop safe aerodigestive reflexes. This researcher stated that offering milk drops aligns directly with this evidence, that by allowing the infant to safely practice sucking, swallowing, and breathing with droplets of milk, it helps to stimulate and develop upper airway protection while wiring the association of hunger to the enjoyment of eating and feeling full. So in this next video, I wanted to show you a sweet little girl who was really very sick, and often she would appear to be asleep after cares. Even so, I would always at least give her a drop of milk, and as you will see, she responds so nicely, and as she matures, she becomes quite a little eater. As you can see, our job is important long-term to these infants. When we send our babies home, we are so excited for them. We assume everything is going well. First birthdays, the inappropriate shoveling in of the spaghetti, holidays, and teenage get-togethers. As I have spoken about the milk drop study, nurses who are parents of preemies who are now adults want to tell me about their children, how hard it is to celebrate, the daily struggle to eat, the sadness of watching your child stare at the food, and the isolation felt. They tear up as they tell me how these aversions have followed their children into adulthood. And maybe, just maybe, milk drops could have helped their child too. So I wanted to leave you on a really positive note and give you hope of what can and did happen in our NICU. And the mother wanted us to tell their story. Parker was born at 23 weeks. On the third day of life, milk drops were started. At 28 weeks, after 3 rounds of medication to close her PDA, it was ligated. At 35 weeks, she was transferred to a level 4 NICU as her chronic lung disease remained severe. The mother requested, though, that the new NICU continue to offer milk drops, which they did. At 52 weeks, 17 weeks later, although still on RAM CPAP, Parker was offered her first bottle. 2 weeks later, she surprised everyone when she progressed to demand feeding. At 56 weeks, she was discharged home on nasal cannula on full oral feedings. However, at 76 weeks, our little girl came down with viral pneumonia. Initially intubated in the PICU, she is transferred for ECMO to allow her lungs to rest and let the virus run its course. The good news, though, is that this little fighter, after 4 weeks in the hospital, was back home holding her own bottle with her feet. Such a wonderful family and such a great outcome. So here is Parker today, a tough little 4-year-old showing off her nails, eating nuggets and fries, enjoying life exactly as it should be.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I love how you're talking about enjoyment.
Yes.
I think, you know, even on rounds, I remember them talking about tolerating their feeds and
Yeah.
even shifting that language from tolerating feeds to enjoying feeds, I think is so important.
It is. It
So
is.
much for that today.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
As we continue exploring innovation today, it's driven by compassion, and our next guest brings a unique perspective that bridges both technology and lived experience. Jaylee Hilliard is a 2-time NICU mom, a neonatal nurse leader, and the VP of Clinical Strategy for Angel Eye. In this talk, she'll show us how artificial intelligence can amplify compassion, not replace it, through tools like contactless monitoring, predictive analytics, and communication platforms that strengthen connections between families and care teams. Welcome, Jaylee. Thanks for joining us here today.
Hi, Leah. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm going to let you get right to your presentation.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me today, everyone. I'm going to share a little bit about my journey today as a NICU mom twice, and also a NICU nurse and former leader, and now the VP of Clinical Strategy at Angel Eye Health. So there'll be a couple of pictures of my little ones kind of dabbled throughout the presentation. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my perspective. I had my first daughter at 32 weeks and 6 days in the height of the pandemic in 2020, which was a very interesting and unique experience that felt very isolating and alone. And I found myself one day kind of standing at the radiant warmer where she was, intubated and struggling to breathe. And I looked around at all of the technology, all of the monitors, all of the data that were being collected. And yet, as a parent, what felt most important to me at that moment was just my connection or the lack of ability to hold or touch or be close to my baby. And so it was really interesting reflecting back on that moment that despite my background and what I knew about nursing and medicine and neonatal care, the number one most important driving force to me as a mom was to hold my baby and be close to her. And so I talk about AI because I think it's something that feels very unknown, is a little terrifying to some of us as we think about it coming in and potentially replacing jobs and workflows. And today really want to encourage everybody to think about a world that could exist in the future where AI is incredibly integrated and supportive, and that this technology is not replacing compassion, but really being leveraged to help amplify it for families and the care team. And then I just want to encourage everybody that each advancement that we make would really bring families closer and help clinicians care with greater confidence. A little bit about the background and challenges that we face today. Number one is data overload. And I think that happens even outside of the NICU. We wear Apple Watches, we're getting pinged to stand up, drink more water. We have a new email, a meeting to attend. And the NICU, we also have incredible data overload from a clinical perspective, but also from a family perspective. Teams are monitoring literally hundreds of data points per baby every second, every minute, from vital signs to blood work, equipment, nutrition orders, so on and so forth. So there's no lack of data that we're receiving. The next issue we have is family disconnect. So families are transferred into this really otherworldly environment that they're not familiar with, the way it looks, smells, sounds, the culture, the equipment, the people they're interacting with, and they're really having to navigate uncertainty and the anxiety that comes from being in such an unfamiliar place with unfamiliar terms. And they can feel really distant from the care and the decisions that are being made about their child, which is why so many of us are working so hard to support a family-centered and family-integrated environment where we can work on solving some of the disconnect and the gaps in care that are there today. The next thing I'm assuming you guys can still hear okay. Sorry, I just got a notice about that. All right. The real problem that we have for both clinicians and families is not a lack of information, but how to use it more effectively to really improve care and empower families. So I want to talk a little bit more about that with you guys today. Let's talk about first a couple of the different types of AI. Again, these are not robots or replacements, but really can be leveraged as smart systems that learn from the data, that help us see patterns, predict risk, and stratify tasks that are under human guidance. The first one's predictive analytics, and that looks at patterns in the data to anticipate risks. So things like early warning signs of sepsis or NEC, understanding subtle cues that could be in vital signs or data that AI or algorithms are receiving. The next one is perceptive AI. So this is vision-based monitoring and what the AI, quote unquote, is seeing. And those are things like contactless cameras or monitors that monitor vital signs. They can see very, very subtle changes that will happen in the baby's skin tone or in their breathing patterns and so on and so forth. It can also look at movement, so how often babies are moving, their position. And then language AI. The language AI is translating complex data into family-friendly updates. It can help summarize complex information that's easy for families to interpret. And it can also provide that in the family's native language and help bridge some of the education and communication gaps that exist today. And then the fourth type is workflow AI, and that reduces a lot of the manual tasks and errors by automating repetitive tasks, like automating safety checks that can really free nurses and clinicians to provide more care at the bedside. A couple of examples when you look through the literature or the research that's happening today that's incredibly exciting is around predictive analytics. So the University of Virginia has models that can recognize subtle signs in predicting sepsis and NEC, like I mentioned above. And this is helping us provide really timely and more accurate and specific interventions to improve short and long-term outcomes of babies. The next is some research that's happening at Mount Sinai, where AI video tools are detecting early neurological changes and seizure activity for earlier therapy decisions and interventions. Again, really aiming to impact outcomes and the growth and development trajectories of children. AI can also recognize facial cues and physiological changes to identify pain or stress, improving efficiency and accuracy of intervention. This is really incredibly helpful, and I'll talk a little bit about this in a few more minutes, but babies are constantly trying to communicate with us by little subtle changes in their body, by grimaces or looks on their face, or little movements of even their fingers and their toes. But we don't always have staff or people there watching and assessing nonstop to pick up on some of these trends and things that we can't catch with the human eye. And that's the really incredible opportunity that we have by leveraging AI. And then I mentioned a little bit about contactless monitoring. So there are some sites that are actually using contactless monitors today, which is really incredible because not only does this help preserve skin integrity and prevent the very sensitive skin that all of these monitors and electrodes and probes are on with our babies, But it also is increasing accessibility. So when you go to do skin-to-skin care, for example, or reposition a baby, there's less wires and monitors and all of the things that make holding or spending time with your baby so intimidating and scary as a parent as well. Let's see. For some reason, my slide is a little distorted on here. I'm not sure what happened to that. But I want to talk a little bit about how AI can make care more human. And it really is the ability to extend our minds, our eyes, and our ears so that we can do better work with our hands and our hearts. It has the opportunity to analyze data very quickly and to observe and watch what's happening without blinking, without taking a break. And these can help really transform the care we're providing to be even more human and more connected if we're leveraging and utilizing it correctly. So let's talk about more time at the bedside. It can automate routine tasks, data analysis, and documentation. Again, giving clinicians all that precious time back to focus on direct care and family interaction. Nurses and clinicians today will talk to you about how much time they spend charting and documenting and doing task after task after task. And families will communicate about how sterile the environment was, or it took them so many days or hours to understand what was happening or to be able to hold or interact with their child. So the more time that we can protect and the more efficient we can create with workflows for clinicians, they're able to spend more time having those human interactions and connecting families to their babies. Next is a voice for babies. So I talked a little bit about the lack of ability for us to just continuously assess what's going on. We know infants have a voice, and there's subtle changes and things that we could detect. If I were a bedside nurse again and I never blinked, I never took a break, I never went on lunch, I never had another patient to care for, there's all kinds of information and things that I would gather. Maybe I wouldn't wait so long until the alarm is alerting to go suction a baby that's intubated, or to provide pain or sedative medication for a baby that's post-surgery. And with cameras and other technology today that's analyzing not only the movement, but also all the data that's being input into these systems, we can actually have that anticipatory guidance to know what a baby is trying to communicate with us before we have all the alarms going off, or they've reached a level of incredible pain that might take a while for them to, they might decompensate and need more respiratory support, for example. But by having that anticipatory guidance, we have more timely interventions. The next is early detection. So there are cameras and sensors that can provide that vigilance and identify indicators that will alert of critical changes more than traditional monitors. There are things like early neuromotor detection, cameras and sensors that are able to take things like a general motors assessment or assessment to determine if there's any neuromotor challenges or issues that a baby might have, and use algorithms to actually detect and alert you that specific movement patterns have been detected that are indicative of a problem that needs a further assessment and can lead to earlier detection, early intervention, again, really aimed at improving the long-term outcomes of these children. And as I mentioned with all of these examples, it's really about leveraging AI to be a powerful tool and not a replacement. We want to create more accurate and more efficient and effective care pathways that can lead to improved outcomes for babies, families, and also improve the balance of work and the demands and stress that it takes on the care team as well. A little bit about supporting family and communication in the NICU. There's some incredible ways that AI can be leveraged even today. There are companies and people that are really making it their mission to figure out how we can embed this technology to improve communication and connection with families, like using AI summaries to translate really complex information or data, or even rounds if families weren't able to be present, to provide summaries and information that's very easy for families to digest and understand, not just what's happening, but where their baby is in the continuum of care, how close they are to making it home. What are some of the goals for your baby in the next 24 hours? What are the hurdles that they're overcoming? And how is the care team working collaboratively with you as a parent to kind of make some of these decisions and plans for the upcoming 24 hours? AI can link changes in the baby's condition to tests and treatments, again, helping families understand the why behind some of the care decisions and really giving them an active voice and the ability to advocate for their baby. I always say that, the only thing worse than not inviting families to have a seat at the table when it comes to care decisions with their child is inviting them to have a seat, but not equipping them with the education, the information, and empowering them with what's happening in that environment so they can truly be an advocate for their child. And then the next example on here really is those simple daily recaps so parents can understand what changed, maybe what interventions took place, and help them start having that ownership and understanding what to look for in their child. It can also provide proactive support through things like language models. I know there are many of us that use things like ChatGPT to help us answer questions, solve problems, filter through large amounts of data, and make things more tangible and easy for us to understand. There is the ability to create these language models where parents can actually have NICU-specific support and specific references that are much more reliable than going on Google. It can also integrate with the health record to have very specific information about what's going on with their child. Again, helping bridge that equity gap and understand what's happening with their child, why decisions are being made when it comes to the medical care for their child, and ultimately empowering them to be stronger, better partners in care for their child as well. And then one example that I think is pretty cool is lactation assistance. So I know there's many NICUs that may not have enough IBCLCs or lactation support for families, or families that have barriers for physically being with their child as well. So you can imagine some type of chat model using AI that would be able to support families and answer some of these questions by feeding it a lot of information and giving it reputable and reliable resources so that you are giving families access to the information they need when they need it. And then just a couple of kind of higher level things to keep in mind as we think about this world and what it's going to look like in the next 1, 3, 5, 10, 20 years from now. And I think one of the most important things for me as a NICU parent, as a clinician, and as a former leader in a NICU is really keeping humanity at the center of the decisions that we're making. So starting with the family voice, parents and nurses and clinicians have to be part of the design process, not an afterthought. So we need to work really closely with industry partners that are working on developing and innovating the next generations of technology that are going to be used in our units. It's not a matter of if we're going to have AI, it's just a matter of when and how. So I would encourage everyone, whether you're a family member, whether you work in industry, whether you work in healthcare specifically or in medicine, really take advantage of those opportunities to reach out, understand, learn more, and provide really valuable insights so that you can be part of what this future is going to look like with AI in the center. Actually, with families hopefully in the center and AI supporting them. The next is transparency. AI decisions always should be explainable and under clinical and ethical oversight. So we want to make sure that we're being very intentional and careful about the way we're using AI to support families, babies, and the care team. Equity, thinking about AI and how we can leverage it to narrow those gaps in care, in education, and understanding, not widen them. And I think if it's done well and we include transparency and the family voice and care teams, there is a world where we can balance AI and the innovation and all of the benefits that it can bring with compassion and humanity. And then lastly is ethics. So making sure that there are ethical principles behind it and how we're all working together to ensure it's used for good. So kind of closing and wrapping up today, I want to thank you guys for your time and kind of going through this little journey about AI and what it could look like and how it could work and support families and care teams. In my mind, I imagine a NICU where every baby's resting peacefully because they're being monitored safely through contactless technology, through algorithms that are analyzing all of the data and bits of information so that these intelligent systems really can alert nurses, care teams, the medical professionals, respiratory therapists, all of those people on the team working so hard today to care for babies, and really provide the predictive information or anticipatory guidance so that they can make the very best decision to provide that safe and accurate care. And where parents, no matter their background, their native language, can see their baby's progress, can see and understand the information, maybe even have peace of mind and see their baby via a camera, for example, if they're not physically there at the bedside, so they truly can feel like part of the care team and advocate and be the very best parents that they can be. This is kind of the intersection that I work in, live in, breathe in every single day. And there really are people out there with industry that are working really, really hard to craft and build a future that is full of compassion, equity, and partnership, really guiding us to do the right thing by the technology in an effort to improve outcomes. And that is it. Here's a picture kind of at the end of the neonatologist and one of the respiratory therapists that provided really great care to one of my children while they were in the NICU. And this is just a reminder that technology is not what is healing these babies. It's really the people and the compassion that are behind all of this work. And we need to be really intentional not to forget that.
I think that's such a lovely way to wrap up your message there, that it really is. It's how the people use the technology to help the other people.
Exactly.
Yes, it's fascinating to think of how quickly things are going to change for our NICU families in the coming few years, and to think how much of a better experience it will be right now for some families, like you say, in terms of accessing information and understanding and being able to quickly translate things, whether it's into lay terms or another language.
Exactly. It's very exciting, and it's incredible to think about, this work is being done right now today. It's being researched, it's being utilized. So that future that we're envisioning, that we think about, or maybe we haven't thought about in some cases, it's not tomorrow, it's not in 10 years, it's today, it's right now. And let's all work together collaboratively to be a part of what that's going to look like.
Agreed. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Jenna, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Have a great day.
Well, thank you. And we're going to move right on talking about connection. We're going to talk about the most immediate type of connection you can imagine, skin to skin. And to do that, I'm going to be joined by Dr. Jess Doobie. She is a neonatologist and associate professor in Ottawa. She serves as the co-chair of the Canadian EPIC Family Engagement Committee. And she's going to be here to break down some myths around skin to skin. Welcome to Preemie Chats.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here on the World Prematurity Day celebration.
Thank you so much. I know people are going to really enjoy this because I feel like we all think we know lots about skin to skin.
Call for Dr. Hillary Reiter to pick you.
Of course, as soon
Perfect
as I
timing.
start talking is when there's a code call. So why don't we at least put up the slides and hopefully
we'll let you get right to it and see how you do.
Right.
Great.
So again, thank you, everyone. I think today I'll be touching on one of the sort of newer controversial topics on skin to skin. We'll go through the evidence and I will be objective with the evidence, and do my best to be not biased, but I think that you'll see on which side I'm quite passionate about. So I think we all have heard the benefits of skin to skin, and I've definitely seen in NICUs a parent who has just given birth to a 27-weeker. They finally make it over to the NICU, and they're all ready to do what they heard about previously about skin to skin. And they're told, no, they can't do it yet because the baby is still 72 hours and we're not moving the baby in order to protect the baby from IVH, intraventricular hemorrhage. And so I want to touch on that topic today about skin to skin care in the first 3 days of life for babies that are born less than 32 weeks gestational age. So really in the past decade, there's been this adoption of what we call IVH bundles in the first 72 hours to try and reduce bleeding in the brain. And these bundles involve many different practices, from things that happen even antenatally, like antenatal steroids, to how we provide respiratory support. But one of the other things that almost all IVH bundles have is this concept of keeping the baby's head in what's called a midline head position. And where does this concept come from? Well, there is some theory behind it and some animal data. The idea that if the baby's head is turned to the side, there's a concern that there's going to be compression on the blood flow from the brain down back to the heart. And the blood will build up in the brain, and that will then lead to bleeding. And so as part of these bundles in the first 72 hours, which is the highest risk time for getting IVH, a lot of the bundles say that the baby has to keep their head in midline position. Sounds like a great idea in theory, but we all know there can be these sort of unintended side effects. And what the unintended side effect has been in the past decade is that this has then prohibited parents from doing skin-to-skin care in the first 72 hours for the babies who may actually benefit the most from skin-to-skin care. So let's briefly look at the evidence. So what is the evidence for doing midline head positioning? I think there's this one author that did a great review, and he really summed it up nicely. He wrote, despite the widespread adoption of midline head positioning, there's little conclusive evidence that midline head positioning reduces intraventricular hemorrhage. So the theory is there, the animal data is there, but when they've actually looked at it in infants, there was a 2020 Cochrane review. They actually didn't find any sufficient evidence that midline head protection reduces bleeding in the brain. And just in case you're curious what I'm talking about, this picture on the right gives you a better idea. So the baby's head is in line with the rest of their body, and then this X is where the baby's head is turned to the side. And I think where this practice has really taken on is because IVH bundles have, as a bundle, shown to improve the rates of intraventricular hemorrhage. The problem is these bundles include lots of different practices, not just midline head positioning. So is it really the midline head positioning that is doing anything for intraventricular hemorrhage? So what do we know about doing skin-to-skin care right away in those first 72 hours for babies that are born less than 32 weeks? So there's actually been 3 very recent randomized controlled trials, all done in Europe, not surprisingly, where they did early skin-to-skin care for babies less than 32 weeks, and they tracked the rates of bleeding in the brain. And they found no difference in rates of IVH compared to keeping the baby in the incubator. I think we also have to take our lens away a bit from not just intraventricular hemorrhage, but what else does early skin-to-skin care offer us that we know later skin-to-skin care offers, but starting right at the beginning may help to enhance these benefits. So when authors have looked just at what doing skin-to-skin care for the tiniest babies right away can do, we know that it can actually improve their breathing, their heart rate, Oftentimes, even the incubator can overheat them, and skin-to-skin care helps to prevent that. If you start skin-to-skin care right away, there's some evidence suggesting then that you're likely to have ongoing breastfeeding. And the question that I think still remains a little bit at large is, what is skin-to-skin care, whether done early or later on in the NICU? What does this mean for long-term neurodevelopment? Oh, we're going to get another announcement overhead. I apologize for that. I should have factored that in. I'm going to pause for a second. So that's the realities of trying to present while at the hospital. All right, so now what? I love this quote from Dr. William Osler, the Canadian who's often said to be the father of modern medicine. He wrote that medicine is a science of uncertainty and an art of probability. Do we need more randomized controlled trials of midline head positioning to prove or disprove whether it actually has any effect on intraventricular hemorrhage? Personally, I think not. I think the benefits that we've seen from early skin-to-skin care probably outweigh anything that midline head positioning gives you. And doing IVH bundles without midline head positioning shouldn't take away the benefits of the other parts of the bundle. But at the end of the day, we all know that medicine is the art of probability, and it's an art. And I think that what needs to happen is probably, one-on-one conversations with the parents about the fact that we're never going to be 100% certain. But based on the best evidence that we have right now, putting your baby against your chest in the first 72 hours of life is probably safe and may even offer some benefits. I think the biggest issue is going to be the culture change. NICUs across North America really have bought into this IVH bundle where the baby cannot be taken out of the incubator in the first 72 hours. And whether it's in a big business or in a hospital, changing culture and changing mentality is probably the biggest hurdle to face right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your presentation. And I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head there at the end, because this is a bee in my bonnet when we talk about skin to skin. Because aside from IVH and even talking about the earliest babies, skin to skin rates aren't fabulous right now in NICUs across the country. And so even when there's seemingly little risk, when we're talking about, the late preterm babies who aren't coming out, what is with that? How can we get these babies out skin to skin? Why do you think there's pushback on something that we know is so beneficial for both parents and babies?
I think that's exactly where the disconnect is perhaps the knowledge or the belief. Oftentimes skin to skin is seen as something nice and cuddling mom and dad with their baby, and not viewed as a medical treatment like intubation, like IV fluids. And so it's, again, really changing that culture that skin to skin care is a medical intervention that has been associated with improved outcomes, sometimes far better than a lot of the other therapies that we use on a day-to-day basis in the NICU.
And so how do we get that messaging out there? I mean, the research is there. So this is what bothers me, is it's like, we know this. So we're depending more on kind of those more medical interventions, if we want to call it that. But how do we spread this message?
I think doing events like this, although you could argue that you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
And so what that means is really going to your unit and finding the people that have the concerns, that have the kind of, oh, this is just nice and cuddly, and actually addressing those concerns, dispelling the myths on one-to-one education or education for your unit as a whole. Because I think it's just kind of been disseminated from one to another healthcare provider, and it's created this culture.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate your perspective on it. I'm really excited about the Family Engagement Epic group that is really looking at skin to skin and those early times of getting these babies where they need to be, even within the first few hours of life. So thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much, and happy World Prematurity Day to everyone.
And continuing with that theme of parents as powerful partners in care, our next guest has stayed up past his bedtime to share knowledge with us. He brings decades of experience and research to the topic of neonatal pain. Mats Eriksson has been a neonatal nurse for over 40 years and is a professor in pediatric nursing. His primary research focuses on understanding and preventing pain in newborns. And today he'll share how parents are an essential resource in protecting their babies from pain. He joins us this afternoon for us Canadians, but tonight for himself because he's joining us from Sweden. So welcome, Professor Eriksson. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, and good evening from Sweden. And I'm sorry, seem to have a bit of internet problem because every time we change presenter, my sound goes away. But I think you can hear me now. And I did upload the slides. Now they seem to be processing. Can you see them, Leah, or can you?
I don't see them, but I will upload them for you here.
Yeah. Yes, please. There they are. Yes. Okay, thank you for having me here. As you heard, it is a very cold and dark November night here in Sweden, but we are also preparing for Prematurity Day on the 17th of November. Let's see, can I change the slide or will you do that? I can do that. Okay, thank you. Okay, as you know, all newborn infants will experience pain, more or less. Healthier babies, not so much, but more premature and sicker, or even more, up to between 7 and 15 painful episodes or events every day during the NICU stay. And that can be blood sampling, injection, suctioning, intubation, tape removal, etc. And you can see on the upper left picture here that it's a needle or a lancet that is puncturing the skin and touching all the pain nerve fibers and nociceptors, sending the pain signals into the spinal cord, the back of the baby, and up to the brain, where all painful signals will sort of sparkle and give bad consequences for the more pain, the more problems there might be later in life. So our job is really to stop and prevent the pain coming to the children. So what do we know then about parents and pain? We know through research that parents are concerned about the pain their infant will be subjected to during the NICU stay. We know that parents want to know more about neonatal pain. We know that parents want to advocate for their infant, be there telling the staff, my baby seems to be in discomfort or pain, it's time to do something. And we even know that parents really wants to contribute and themselves perform pain alleviation and pain management. So what can parents do then? They can, of course, be present at the NICU. I know that Canada has quite a good social system the way that we have in Sweden, so you can be on a sick leave with your baby. You can be the person who informs and tells the staff about how my baby is feeling, and you can be the one who really provides pain alleviation. And there are a lot of things that parents can do. You can hold the baby, you can hold them in a relieving position called facilitated tucking that you see on the picture to the right, sort of holding them together. If you're a mother, you can do breastfeeding, you can do skin-to-skin contact, you can sing or hum to your baby, baby lullabies, and you can provide them with sweet solution, glucose or sucrose, or non-nutritive sucking on a pacifier might be the finger of the parent. Because all these things are really pain relieving and things that parents can do. So of all these things, what is the most effective way then? We know that it's a very good evidence for sweet solutions, 1 or 2 milliliters in the mouth before a painful procedure, for skin-to-skin contact, and for breastfeeding. We also know there is an adjuvant, an extra, an add-on effect for holding the baby, facilitated tucking, massage, singing or humming, and non-adjunctive sucking. And we really know that combine different methods is the way to go. If you start with one or two of the things to the left and then add from the right column here, then you will have really good pain alleviation for minor and moderate painful procedures. So what we did here in Sweden is a study that we call the SWEPUP study, standing for Parents Participating in Pain Alleviation. And the first part of the study was that we had focus groups together with the staff and the parents, and we discussed with them, taught them different methods, how they could help the child. And then they performed this during a blood sampling that was ordered for medical reasons. And then we interviewed them, both the parents and the staff, and see what did you feel about that. And the results are published in the Children last year, saying that this is something you can do. You need to have time to prepare, enough time, enough preparation. That is important. But the parents said that singing helped them really to focus on the infant instead of the procedure, instead of the painful procedure. And both parents and nurses described how the live lullaby that the parents sing created a calm and trusting and loving atmosphere in the room. We also found that it was a feasible, quite easy intervention to do. So that is something we try to do now and implement on the NICUs. In the second part of the SWEPUP study, we did a randomized controlled trial where 225 mother-infant dyads were randomized into one of three groups, either the standard care, which is lying on the table or in the cot and receiving sweet solution. Group number 2 had skin-to-skin contact, and group number 3 was the main intervention group, having skin-to-skin contact, breastfeeding, and singing. We are analyzing results now and can soon publish them, but we have some quotes from the parents, and this mother said, "Oh, I thought this was a fantastic experience today. What a huge difference compared to the blood sampling procedure 3 years ago when my older child went through the same test, but on the examination table. She was hysterical all through that procedure. Today my baby was completely calm. I think he recognized the singing and my voice from the womb. I will absolutely use this pain relief combination in the future." So now we're setting up a new project called the POP study, Parent-Led Pain Management to Optimize Neonatal Pain Care. And you can see the word here is parent-led. We're talking previously about parent participation and what can parents do, but we want it really be to parent-led. The parents are the ones who knows the child best and can also then be advocate and provide the best pain alleviation. So it's an international collaboration, and we're happy to say that Fabiana Valchini is one of the collaborators in the project. Will come to Sweden next week for a project meeting. We will try to explore barriers and facilitators for parents to participate in the pain alleviation, because some NICUs are good at this and others are not. So we need to find what are the problems and how can we implement better practices at the NICUs. So we'll also try to develop interventions and tools for the NICUs to use. And we hope really this will be a good project that will help make it even easier for parents to come into the NICUs and provide pain and lead the parent management, the pain management. So what do we need then to have good parental participation and parent-led pain management? Of course, we need a society where the legislation and social benefits allow parents to be at the unit. At the unit, we need to have facilities for the parents to be there all around the clock, to stay there, maybe for siblings to be there. They need a bed in the beds, they need a kitchen, they need so they can be with their baby. We need the parents to trust themselves, to be willing to provide this pain alleviation. So we need to teach them, we need to work together with them. and we need the staff to allow them to do this. It can also be a hindrance, a barrier. But if we can make all these 4 things work, I think we will have a better future with more parent-led pain management. We try to define what do we mean with parent-led neonatal pain management. And we say parent-led neonatal pain management is more than simply a human and compassionate thing to do. The inclusion of parent-led pain care has been scientifically proven to be one of the most effective ways to reduce pain associated with repeated painful procedures in early life, and parents report the desire to participate. So that's all from Sweden tonight. Thank you for listening to my message.
Thank you for sharing. That was much more coherent than I could do a presentation at night. I love that, as Fabiana said in the comments, and I might even pop it up here because she said this is such a great initiative. They're so much further ahead than Canada, and we are happy to collaborate to bring this here. So I appreciate you sharing about this, and I hope that it is something that spreads, and that is, I love your distinction between parent participation and parent-led. And I think that's something we have to keep close to our hearts and minds as we continue with projects like this. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this amazing day. I mean, it was so inspiring. We got through so much information. We heard from families, researchers, clinicians, and it reminds us all that progress happens when compassion and innovation come together. And of course, we all have that same mission of giving preterm babies a strong start for a brighter future.
You're so right. And none of this would have been possible without our incredible guests, our engaged audience from across Canada and around the world, and our generous sponsors, Medela, Angel Eye, for sponsoring this session, as well as CPBF's silver presenting sponsors for this year, Mallinckrodt, Methapharm, and Gluckstein. Your partnership makes it possible for these conversations and this progress to continue.
As the sun sets tonight, and it will be setting here on the East Coast within the next hour, cities across our country will light up purple. So keep an eye out for that over the weekend and right through to Prematurity Day. Those landmarks that are lit up purple are symbols of connection, of hope, and of every preemie who continues to defy the odds. So again, if you see one, please take a photo, share it, and remember that you're a part of this story too.
And I would remind you too, you can head to our website, canadianpreemies.org. You can share today's program. The replay will be up. You can also discover all kinds of ways that you can become involved. You can check out our fundraising toolkit, and it has details of all kinds of things that you can do on a local and national level.
Thank you for being a part of this day. It's been great to see the comments and people joining us from really all over the world. And that makes you a part of this community. We will see you next Friday for another Preemie Chat, where we'll continue the conversation on developmental care. It's more than just a nice thing to do. Until then, continue to plug into this community, continue these very important conversations. Don't forget to wear your purple on November 17th. And keep talking about prematurity, because together we are advancing care for our little ones. Thanks again for joining us.
Bye, everyone.